at a big organization, let's say 1,000+ employees, you can forcefully use the wrong credentials to log in. What that will do is trigger an IT ticket. IT, they're busy. Maybe it takes 3-4 hours for them to get back to you, right? And so what we found were people were doing that intentionally, and then 4 hours out of the day, they just didn't have to work because they couldn't log in.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen AI case study series. In this episode, we have on Jordan Wilia, the business development manager with Teramind, which is a company that specializes in workforce productivity and security solutions. Do I got that about right?
Got it right.
Awesome. Jordan, welcome to the show. To kick things off, I would love to get a bit of a Cole's notes of your history, who you are, where you came from, how you came to be the business development manager with Teramind.
Ooh, this is a good question. I mean, I guess it depends how far back we're going, but I guess a good place to start is how I got into sales originally was I was in law school. My family really pressured me to go to law school. Ended up hating it after the first semester, but because I was on scholarship, I kind of had to justify leaving. And so I started a business in the Web3 space. Eventually scaled that, doing NFT stuff, all that nerdy stuff. People either love or hate it. I loved it. So I was in the NFT world, went to, NFT NYC, did all that fun stuff, scaled the business. We had like 14 employees, a lot of contractors, and it was really booming. And then if anybody's familiar with the space, everything tanked in around June of 2022. So when everything was tanking, we had to close up shop. And then I got into the tech world because since being in the Web3 space, I just by default started to understand how to code and eventually became a freelance software engineer. Then if anybody also remembers in 2022, that's when Elon Musk bought Twitter. And then everybody started getting fired. So
has it been 2 years since that happened?
Yeah, it's been, I believe so. It's gotta be. Yeah. If my memory serves me correctly, about 2 years since that happened. And people are still, out of jobs in the software engineering world. So it was pretty brutal in the space. As you can imagine, all these really great engineers got dumped into the freelance world. And so I was like, what's next? And then that's when I jumped into sales, got involved with a health tech startup, moved on from there and joined Teramind. After about 6 months of building the outbound motion, became the business development manager. Now have 2 people under me and trying to scale that up to, as many as I can, I guess.
I love the plan.
But
so let's dive into that a little bit. You're brought on as the business development manager. We were talking before we started recording here about how these roles aren't as clearly defined as they used to be. So I'm sure you're wearing many hats and there's a lot of different things that you're taking care of. Can you kind of elaborate on some of the day-to-day stuff that you're working on with Teramind?
yeah, so I guess just touch on that many hats point. I mean, especially when you're at a smaller company, startup, which, everybody kind of is involved in nowadays with all the techs that are AI, everything's kind of booming. You have to wear a lot of hats. And if you're looking at job descriptions, again, unless it's a really flushed out role, they'll tell you we want somebody with grit. You don't necessarily have to be amazing at sales, but you need to really understand that, how to do different things on your own and figure it out. And so that's kind of how it happened at Teramind. And yeah, it's your question about what my day-to-day looks like, since transitioning from an individual contributing role to now being a part of other people's success. I think it's a lot of it is just making sure that let me think about how I walk through my day as a business development manager. Let's see. I mean, we do stand-up calls. I do Friday dojos, right? Just to make sure that in the space we're understanding any sort of nuance from a technical standpoint. Because as you mentioned, Teramind works in the security world as well as the productivity world. Productivity, of course, is a lot more straightforward. You're looking at things like labor cost, OpEx cost. But when you get into cybersecurity, people get a lot more nuanced and a lot more technical. So we hold Friday dojos in our team just so I can give them a lay of the land of what's going on in the tech industry. A lot of pipeline hygiene, right? So making sure data is clean. I think clean data is really underrated in a lot of organizations, and especially in the startup world. Having extremely clean data can lead to so much more revenue generation, whether that's looking at churn loss customers, right? When I look at a list from 10 months ago and I'm trying to figure out how to reach out to them today, if everything in your CRM and whatnot is not clean, then you're going to have a lot of problems. So I think keeping up with pipeline hygiene and just overall CRM hygiene, sales data, And then a lot of what we're doing right now is I am working with our ABM director to really build out the top of funnel motion and then have that funnel into how my team operates, right? So looking at how we're targeting with marketing and then what that looks like from a top of funnel perspective, and then matching that with any outbound efforts across those different accounts and looking at different engagement and signals and doing all of that to ensure that we're, bringing in as many people as we can be.
So from one marketing guy to another marketing guy, I know there's a lot of challenges that we face in terms of the way that we communicate with prospects, the way that we attract them in. I, from my experience, I know that there's no one size fits all solution to all of this kind of stuff. But what are you guys doing right now that's really working for you?
I think the biggest thing that's worked over the past or since 2024 is really focusing and getting away from, more volume based outreach and just really focusing on narrowing in on specific target accounts, looking at, again, intent signals across all the different channels that we're getting these signals from, and then just hyper targeting and being hyper relevant to these folks. So from a marketing perspective, I think what's really working is creating ad campaigns around accounts that we want to attract and using their color themes, using, you can't necessarily, I don't know all the rules around it. My ABM director deals with that stuff, but I don't think you can put the logo of the account that you're going after in the actual ad. But we do something that really toes that line and gets them to look at it. He gets them to click on it. And that's seen a lot of success. And then again, how that works in tandem with outbound is once we have all of these people clicking, we're looking at open rates, click rates across these different marketing campaigns that we're doing, looking at how well ads are doing, who's clicking on them and whatnot. Then we take all of that information and funnel that into how we're looking at outbound and creating these warm intent lists.
You reminded me of a campaign that I heard about in, I think it was Jab, 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 Right Hook. Somebody was really working really, really hard to get Gary Vaynerchuk's attention. And what they ended up doing was going to Google and buying Google AdWords for his name. And then they created like a landing page and a headline, a call to action. It was like, hey, this is only for Gary. If you're Gary, we want you to click here and then take a look at this video. And so he ended up working with them for a short period of time. But I love the creativity in your approach to the creative compliance, right? Like there's some rules that we got to stay inside of, but also can we stretch that boundary a little bit, which is very brave. But then that presents some other situations. Like what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing in terms of your ability to do what you are doing in how creative you are in your marketing and customer acquisition efforts?
I think honestly, a lot of the challenges is around more like internal struggles. And I want to preface this by saying I love my company. I love everybody at the top. But that being said, I think because this company, just for context on Teramind, has been around since 2014, completely bootstrapped, right? They've never raised any money. And so they've been able to really grow an extremely successful company, just kind of being product led, right? So because of that, they don't have that sales sort of marketing nuance. A lot of what they did was just kind of spray and pray, and it's worked in the past. But as you've seen with just in general in the entire landscape, that's obviously changed, and you can't really just send out 100,000 emails and generate revenue that way anymore. I mean, you'll get some clicks, some deals, but it doesn't work in the same way it did before. And so, trying to position the way that we're trying to position, alongside my ABM director, and build that out as a complete sort of go-to-market motion has been difficult in proving out the concept without having all the tools to prove it out, if that makes sense. So it's like, yeah, you guys can go and do it if you prove it works. It's like, well, we can't prove it works if we don't have all of the tools in place. It's like, well, you can start to get the tools in place, so you kind of go into that circle from an internal perspective. And I think that's been one of the biggest problems. But from outside of those internal struggles, I think we've honestly seen a lot of success. I haven't seen like really too much challenges. Like I said, we've been extremely successful since our ABM director and I have been working together. So it's all, I don't want to make it seem like it's all like up and up, but I can't think of any too many challenges outside of the internal struggles right now.
What do you attribute that to? Is that just because you guys have such a killer product line? Or, I mean, you mentioned that you were like light in your product line. So what is that? What would you give the credit to in terms of your success?
Yeah, I think we have a product that works, which always helps. And that's relevant to a lot of people in the space, right? So like you mentioned, we do employee monitoring for either productivity or security. And then, of course, there's a lot of edge cases with use cases. But with companies moving remote, they want to see what their employees are doing, whether that's high level or super granular. And so we give people the ability to do that. And then from a more enterprise level, right, looking at security. So if you could imagine some really large enterprise organization, there could be disgruntled employees that are maliciously moving around secure data. Maybe if you work at a bank or something, then you have a lot of access to PPI or PHI information, right? You can exfiltrate somebody's social security card relatively easily. So all of these things are super relevant for large banks. I mean, you hear about them every now and then where there's like some data breach or some data leak or whatever the case may be. That could have been an insider threat that we could have prevented. And now, since they didn't prevent it, they're looking at liability in the X millions of costs, right? So we just have a product that works and is relevant to what's going on in the world today. And so I think having that is pretty core to having a really great business. And then creating those creative strategies just accelerates that exponentially.
Is there any, I guess, specific tools that you guys are using to help keep track of that, or do you use your own software as well?
So keep track of which component, because I mean, our tech stack's relatively large, but it I guess depends on what exactly we're looking at.
So, okay, let's start with, I guess, the customer relationship types stuff, like anything to do with acquisition or nurturing or, churn, that sort of thing. Do you guys use external third-party stuff, or do you have your own software that you developed? How does that look?
So at least to my knowledge, I think we only use one internal tool for some building stuff. But other than that, and then I think it also manages our free trials. But other than that, a lot of our data, for our CRM, we use HubSpot. For general sequencing and sort of outbound efforts, that's happening through Apollo. So we have HubSpot for our CRM, Apollo for, I guess, our sales enablement tool. We also use ZoomInfo for data and whatnot. And then those are three big tools. And then we also have G2, which I don't think we leverage as effectively as maybe we can be. But those are kind of the main tools. I'm trying to think if we have anything else. And then we're using Intercom really heavily.
Like for internal communications type stuff?
No, Intercom. So Intercom we used for, it's that chat bubble in the bottom right. And
Oh,
because,
right. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
So this is interesting because you guys are implementing a lot of client-facing tools, a lot of different ways to touch points and stuff. And I had the privilege of going through your website. I, played around with the demo and just kind of looked at everything. It's very intuitive. It's very user-friendly. But this kind of begs the question. I'm sure that there were many iterations to get to that point. What do you guys do for that user interface streamlining? Is that something that you guys do internally? Do you rely on third-party companies? How do you guys navigate that?
honestly, probably not the best person to answer this question, but because I've never seen any third party use, although we could. I mean, sometimes we come out with collateral that we use third party for. Like we recently worked with a bunch of lawyers to generate some European compliance collateral for folks. So we're always doing stuff with third parties. My knowledge of it is not super, I'm not kind of a part of those conversations all the time. But that being said, I know we are doing a huge overhaul of our website right now. So, and we're doing a big overhaul of the UI UX experience for the live demo that I think you played around with. Because unlike you, maybe you're a little more technical. A lot of the HR folks, for example, or people just focus on productivity. If you saw all those features, all of those different data points, it kind of becomes cumbersome for someone in HR to kind of look through, and it almost kind of creates this paralysis for them from a buying perspective. And so that, of course, raises their resistance and makes them kind of click off. So that's something that we're always trying to get better at, and it's something that we're actively working on overhauling currently.
Well, and this I think is probably going to continue to be an ongoing challenge for you in that technology is constantly evolving, right? It's a dynamic space. There's never anything that's concrete or static. Everything is moving. So for you guys, in terms of your ability to stay nimble in the space, what are you guys doing to continually optimize?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, one of the things that we recently did over the past couple of months is create an advisory board specific to the security side. Because again, as you kind of move up market in the enterprise space, it becomes a lot more security focused. And then the productivity is just kind of like an add-on. It's like, oh, great, we can also do productivity metrics. But really, again, as you move enterprise level, then you're looking for all these malicious behavior happening because that's really where the kind of ROI comes into play. So from that perspective, we've created an entire advisory board for insider threat risk management. Actually, at RSA, which is one of the biggest security events in the entire world, happened about a month ago. We got to meet one of them, gave us a ton of important info on what cybersecurity analysts are doing day to day, and then how we can make our product better for those folks from a user perspective, not just a management perspective. And so I think that's one way that we're really making sure that we have our ear to the ground, right? We're talking with these advisors every X cadence and making sure that our product really helps them in their job function. So I think that's one big way. And then I think also we're just always looking for internally, right? We're always having discussions on what can be better. We're constantly doing competitor analysis. So I think there's a lot of ways in which we're making sure that we're consistently kind of at the top in our market.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it would be an easy or a simple task to gather and manage feedback from all of your users.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, we do have a really strong customer success team. And so they hold like, I want to say 2 times a week, they're talking about, and this is maybe a team of 15, 20. I don't know how large the team is, but they all get in consistently and talk about what's happening from SMB, mid-market, all the way to enterprise, and talking about the different problems that people are having, the different ways people are combating those problems, the different best practices, whatever the case may be. And they're talking about this regularly, and then looping in our product managers and all the like. So we have a really great, I guess, communication streamline in how everything is happening in our organization to make sure that we're capturing people's feedback and making the best product that we can be.
Well, given that you guys are, I guess, like a SaaS-based company, there's a ongoing challenge of the evolution of this technology and trying to stay up to date with everything and not get left behind. And so I'm sure that to some degree you guys have your finger on the pulse of some current trends and things that are kind of emerging. What do you see happening in the space right now?
Yeah, one of the biggest things, especially in the security space and the productivity space, is how are you leveraging AI and machine learning to make that really a hyperbolic effort? And so, like us, similar, we've been double whatever. What's the term there?
Doubling down.
Doubling down. Okay, thank you. I think if I said double down, it messed me up, but doubling down, yeah.
Yeah.
Doubling down on that exact effort, right? So we have a really great AI machine learning engineering team. And over the past, I don't know how long, but maybe at the beginning of the year, we released Omni, which is our new AI feature. And so, again, we're just making sure, like you said, we have the finger on the pulse and we're staying ahead of that because everybody's going to start coming out with AI and machine learning if they haven't already. But in the security space, there does seem to be a lag time. So I think in that perspective, we've been ahead of the game and we're constantly iterating over how it works and operates to make sure that it's filling the gaps that it's supposed to.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you guys are working to incorporate the AI stuff because I know there's a ton of companies out there that are really reluctant to even dabble in it just because they feel like it's a little bit too early. What helped you make the decision to say that it's a good idea to keep going?
I think it's just all the gaps and challenges that we're hearing from customers, right? So like if we think about productivity, we have a lot of granular metrics around productivity, but then how do you know if somebody is just using a mouse jiggler? How do you know if somebody opens their Slack and just holds down the space bar, right? How do you know these things? One thing that we found when we started doing, testing across different companies with Omni is people were actively, what do we call it? They were actively doing work avoidance. And so what that looked like was, at a big organization, let's say 1,000+ employees, you can forcefully use the wrong credentials to log in. What that will do is trigger an IT ticket. IT, they're busy. Maybe it takes 3-4 hours for them to get back to you, right? And so what we found were people were doing that intentionally, and then 4 hours out of the day, they just didn't have to work because they couldn't log in. So they tell their manager, hey, I can't log in. It locked me out. And then, of course, for 4 hours later, they get their password reset, and now they're good to work. But they're doing that weekly consistently. And so we found that. And it's something that we're able to find. We're able to find moonlighters, right? People working multiple jobs. So just by default of hearing these problems of how do I know if my employee is working multiple jobs, even if your product says that they're being productive? It's like, okay, well, now AI can pick it up and they can tell.
Wow. That is very powerful. So, I guess to wrap things up here, um, Jordan, what would you say would be a useful piece of advice for anybody that's in the space who's kind of reluctant to dabble in some of these new ideas that are coming to light?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, so me and my ABM director, I mean, we're always trying to create stuff that's super out of the box. And I think that ultimately the people that are succeeding right now, especially in the sales space, and maybe the marketing space as well, are people that are really pushing the envelope because everybody is staying in the same box for the most cases, right? They're sending the same types of emails, the same types of formatting. Marketing generally looks the same. Websites all look the same. And so I think that you really have to be different in your approach to getting people's attention. And by doing that, you're going to be successful. And the only way you can do that is by failing first, right? So looking at how AI can integrate with your outbound sequences to create personalization, or whatever the case may be. Right now, we're doing like a bunch of stuff where we're leveraging AI to create personalized videos. We're leveraging AI to do our account research for discovery calls that are on our calendars, right? So, I mean, we're doing a lot to make sure that we're staying ahead of the game. And in that way, I think you can be successful. So anybody that's kind of fearful of that, I think that fear is only going to drive you to not being as successful as you can be.
So the idea is to stay open to the possibilities, explore, and then I love this one: fail fast, fail frequent, fail forward.
Oh, perfect. Perfectly said. I mean, that's literally it. I mean, the amount of times I've failed, but like when you fail fast, you could succeed fast, right? So,
Right. It,
yeah,
it does
so
kind of run hand in hand. That extra stride that you take to mess something up is what gives you the insight that you need to actually do it the right way moving forward. So I love that that's a part of your mantra in terms of how you guys do things. Jordan, you've been incredibly generous with your time today, and I can't thank you enough. And the guests or the people that are listening to this are going to be, I'm sure that they're going to get a lot of value out of everything that you shared here. So thank you for that.
yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate the call. It's been fun. I love talking about this stuff. I love talking about sales, marketing, and especially our company and our industry. So always happy.
On that note, if somebody did want to reach out to you to kind of pick your brain and kind of see if there's any way that you could help them, is that a possibility? And if so, how would one go about doing that?
Yeah, I love talking to people. I'm actually a community lead at Apollo. So they have a sales community, which is a great way to get in contact with me. I don't know what it is, but if you just go to apollo.io and talk about their sales community or type in their sales community, I'm sure you'll find it. But also I'm super active on LinkedIn. I'm always trying to get people into meetings on LinkedIn. So you can always reach out to me there and see what's going on.
Beautiful. All right. That's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us. If you want to get in touch with us, it's nextgencalls.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and we will see you in the next one.